I want to talk today about the search for the Holy Grail in real estate. You know what the Holy Grail in real estate is? This is the biggest power move going on, I would say, globally in the world of real estate portals. The Holy Grail in real estate is the end-to-end ecosystem, right? The one-stop shop, combining home search, brokerage, mortgage title, all those adjacent services together in one spot. And if you listen to the big companies right now leading the charge, this is what they'd have you believe it is, right? The Indiana Jones version. Sexy, romantic, it works out, it's great. But the possibility is that it could turn into this, the Monty Python version. All right? So that's one thing we're going to unpack. I'm going to unpack today. So to start out, I want to talk about the portal wars. All right? In the U.S. market, this has been a huge shift, a huge move with CoStar coming on the scene, spending hundreds of millions, billions of dollars to try to disrupt the status quo, the incumbent, Zillow, right? So what's happened? They've spent a lot of money and traffic has gone up. This is not rocket science, all right? You spend a lot of money on advertising, you will generate traffic. There's nothing wrong with that. That's the strategy. But this is a great case study to watch to see what happens. What happens when you have a competitor, a challenger portal with over $1 billion, deep, deep pockets, try to disrupt the status quo. So that's what we're watching in real time. But what we found out, like a key learning out of this, is that portal traffic is non-zero sum. All right, so over the past 3 years, while Homes.com has built up its traffic in pink, all right, and gone down a little bit, but as they've built up that traffic, not one bit has come from the incumbent portals. The blue bar is Zillow, Realtor.com, and Redfin, the other top 3 portals in the US. And this is in Q1 over the past 3 years. I mean, I couldn't have made this up. It is identical. It hasn't shifted at all. I think there's a key learning there, right? And that is that when a consumer is looking for a home, they're willing to go to more than one portal. We kind of all know that, and we've nodded our heads, but this is real-life example of that being true. And then, again, if you zero into Homes.com, you see after a big launch, in terms of revenue and customers, after a big launch, over the past 5 quarters, revenue's kind of flattened out, right? Number of customers and estimated number of customers have flattened out, which, you know, it's just interesting, right? That's a data point. I mean, that's what, $70 million a year in revenue? Like, I'd take $70 million a year in revenue. That's great. But if you zoom out and you look at how that compares to the big incumbents, it's still a 20th the size of Zillow, the leading portal. And it's not moving. And also generating $70 million a year in revenue when you're spending $500 million to build that brand, that's very expensive. Not every company can afford to do that. And how long can you afford to do that for? Now, this is not just the US. Again, we'll zoom out, look at Australia. You've got the REA group, has a commanding traffic lead over the number 2 portal there, Domain, increasing over time, up and up and up. This is over the past 8-9 years. And that traffic lead is translating to a revenue lead, which is increasing. If you look at total Australian revenues for REA versus Domain, it's going up over time. Right? These are strong incumbents fighting against strong number 2s. Same in the UK. That revenue lead of Rightmove over Zoopla, again, increasing over time. And it's magnitudes larger for all of these portals. 2x, 3x, 4x, right? So if you sum all of that up and you see what's going on, just the real estate advertising business, not adding all these adjacencies, you know, the holy grail of real estate, just the core business, it's going up. The difference between the number 1 and number 2 is increasing over time, even as these portal wars are playing out. It's not having much of an effect. So what does that tell us? It is a great time to be the number 1 portal. All right, so let's shift to the Holy Grail, right? These ecosystem wars that are happening. If we're looking at the big power moves in the US right now, there's just a couple, just a handful that I'm going to talk about today. This is the biggest one. Right? And remember, we don't know how it's going to play out. Is it the Indiana Jones version or is it going to be the Monty Python version? So Simon, back when I was up here in 2018, I had this slide, you know, and that did not age well. This is ugly and I apologize. But this is nothing new. Back in 2018, I was talking about this, right? Nearly all of the real estate portals are expanding across the value stream, providing more services to consumers and agents. Why are they doing that? Trying to make more money, right? When you tap out the core business, you need other things. I had a strategy role at a portal. Like, I've had that slide, right? The concentric circles, we're here, but as soon as we start selling people mortgages, we're going to make a lot of money. Turns out it's really hard. Back in 2018, Zoopla was the case in point. They kind of famously spent £500 million acquiring adjacent businesses. And do we remember that? Like, does everybody in this room remember that and what happened and how it worked out? Because if you're kind of ignoring the past, we're not going to learn. Like, it didn't work out. It was not a 1 + 1 = 3 proposition. It was a 1 + 1 = 2.05, right? And when private equity came in, they unwound the whole thing. So there's a lot of examples. So what's happening right now? Rocket, one of the largest, if not the largest mortgage company in the US, acquired Redfin, a real estate portal, and they're kind of leading the charge. So what's different now? The slide looks a lot better. It's cleaner, solid colors, but they're combining, right? Home search, buy and sell, brokerage operations, financing, title and closing, right? They want to provide this one-stop shop, this ecosystem where they kind of capture consumers. Zillow, the number one portal in the US, is doing the same. It's a bit harder to read, but the same thing is in this chart. Home search, brokerage, mortgage, title. And a whole bunch of other stuff, by the way, but the main components are there. Zillow talks about their super app. The super app is this walled garden, this closed ecosystem, a one-stop shop. What's interesting about watching this play out in the US is Zillow and Rocket are approaching it from two totally different angles. So we're going to be able to see how it plays out and what works. Zillow's approaching it with the traffic. Zillow's got a ton of consumer eyeballs, exponentially more than Rocket and Redfin combined. They've also got an established agent network. Zillow's working with the agents. They've been doing that for a decade, 2 decades. They have relationships. Those are the two areas where Rocket is weaker. Rocket, on the other hand, is approaching it from the other direction. They have thousands of mortgage loan officers. And it turns out, as much as people have tried to disrupt mortgage with technology, it hasn't happened yet. It's still dependent on mortgage loan officers, human beings like you and me, in an office, in front of a desk, in front of a phone. That's important. So Zillow, Redfin, and Rocket are coming at it from the mortgage side. And they're also coming at it with a huge advantage in their marketing spend, nearly $1 billion. A lot of money. The other really interesting and important point out of what's happening right now in the US with this is these are very large companies, very profitable companies with a lot of cash to invest and spend. These are some of the biggest, most profitable businesses in the portal space. And what do you do with that cash? One of the things you do is you advertise, right? I don't care what you're selling. If you run a Super Bowl commercial, you're going to get attention. And that takes a lot of money and a lot of capital. So it's always easy to say, this time it's different, but this time it might be different. Well, it's certainly different this time, but I don't know if it's going to work, right? Indiana Jones, Monty Python, not so sure here. But these companies are spending huge amounts of money. And just like the craze of iBuying in the United States a number of years ago, when you start advertising to consumers, they're going to start asking questions. They're going to ask everybody questions, whether you offer that or not. The other interesting thing about Rocket's move in this space is we're moving from bundle to bundle and save. So bundling all these services together and then selling them to consumers, that's great for the portal because they make more money. It's not necessarily solving an actual problem for the consumers. But if you bundle and save, that's different. That's where things get interesting. If, as a consumer, as a home buyer, I can save $20,000, this is from Rocket's investment deck. This is their public pitch. I can tell you who doesn't like this. Mortgage companies, real estate agents, right? Anybody who's clipping the ticket. But Rocket's saying, hey, we're big, and if you bundle all this stuff with us and stay in our ecosystem, we'll rebate you $20,000. You'll save $20,000. I don't know if that's going to work or not, but it's a big number. So we'll see. But out of all of this, I think, one of the most important things of the end-to-end ecosystem is there will be winners and losers. All right? This is not like the portal wars and traffic where it's non-zero sum. The end-to-end ecosystem is zero sum. There are only a finite number of transactions in every market. And every transaction they capture is one less that goes out to the rest of the market. And this isn't going to be companies going out of business, right? The way this is going to play out is the agent down the road or the mortgage company down the road. Last year they did 10 deals. This year they do 8. They don't know why, right? Why did I do less? I don't know. It's the market's fluctuating. No, it's not the market's fluctuating. It's very, very large players in this space are spending billions of dollars capturing those consumers before they even get to you. That's why we have to pay attention to this. Now, just to go back a couple of slides, you may have seen this and maybe you wondered, what was that little pink one on the left? Redfin. Redfin was a big portal and a brokerage for a number of years. I want to dig into that a little bit. And you notice from this slide, right, it's operating cash flow. Is that profitability? Is it not profitability? Because if you read Redfin's press releases, they're profitable. What even is profitability? I don't know if you have the same problem in Europe, but in the US, profitability is very fungible. So what is it? I found a really great cheat sheet that I want to run you through. So this will help you decipher how companies talk about their profitability. If a company has good cash profits, they'll talk about those. All right? If they don't, then they talk about adjusted profit, like EBITDA. If they don't have that, they talk about gross profits. If they don't have good gross profits, they'll talk about revenue. And if they don't have good revenue, they'll talk about adjusted revenue indicators, like GMV. If they don't have any of that, they'll talk about how they were voted the best place to work in whatever city they're located in. So just keep that in mind as you hear and read these press releases. But to dive into Redfin, so what happened? Redfin got acquired. In its 7 years as a public company, its stock price went down by about 48%. Not great. Again, over that same period of time, in terms of operating cash flow, which is like legit old school profitability, not a metric, they mainly lost money. They made some money during the post or the middle pandemic years when the real estate market was on fire in the US, but generally lost a lot of money. Right before they got acquired, they were saddled with about $815 million in debt. And that blue line is how much cash they had. So it doesn't take a genius to say that's bad news. How do they have that much debt? Well, earlier they raised and spent $750 million on some big acquisitions. They bought a big rentals business called RentPath, and they bought a mortgage company called Bay Equity. Now, and I think there's a great cautionary tale here. So Redfin was doing a lot of things. They were trying to do a lot of things, right? They're a website, a portal. They have employed agents, and they're a brokerage. They have tech to make their agents more productive. They have a mortgage business, a title business. Then they went out and they acquired a rentals business and another mortgage business. I think the lesson here, it turns out, if you try to do too much with too little, trying to build this end-to-end ecosystem, you get acquired, you get sold. Didn't work. So be careful about trying to do too much. All right, the last big power move going on in the US is exclusive inventory. All right, and this is a battle being fought primarily between Compass, one of the largest brokerages in the US, and Zillow, the #1 real estate portal. I'll walk you through what this means. So exclusive inventory. Compass, the #1 brokerage in the US, has a 3-phased marketing plan where new listings start out as a private exclusive, so that's only in the Compass ecosystem. You have to literally call a Compass agent to get access to that. That lasts for a short period of time, and then it becomes a coming soon listing where it has some wider exposure. Maybe it's shared with other brokerages. Maybe it's in an MLS. Maybe it's on a website. And then lastly, it goes to the full market. Now, I've been paying attention to private exclusives for a while with Compass, but earlier this year, I was looking at the numbers, and this shocked me that the number of private exclusives they had tripled since the last time I checked, up to 6,000. It's like, wow, that's kind of a big deal. What's going on? What are they up to over there? And since then, it just kept going up and up and up, approaching 10,000 exclusive listings. So you might think like, okay, that's not a big deal. 10,000 listings, it's not that much. But then if you start looking at the social media posts from Compass, you see things like this, right? I mean, just look at it today across the United States. 8,000 homes for sale only available on Compass.com. Interesting. You can start thinking about what are they doing? What's the goal here? The other interesting thing is, in rolling this out, Compass had and has a really strong ground game. If you kind of LinkedIn stalk and look at the pictures, you notice interesting things. You notice in their offices they have posters talking about their private exclusives program, right? They have T-shirts. I don't know how many people in here have T-shirts about your strategy, right? They have T-shirts about it. They have competitions, that picture in the upper right, this office contest. So this is not a plan where you kind of, write it up in a PowerPoint deck, email it out to everybody, have an all hands, then okay, we're good to go. Very, very strong ground game. And their agents, it's a great advantage to Compass agents because they would send this out in an email. Want to know what's coming soon? Call me. I'm the only person who has access to this exclusive inventory in your neighborhood. Very powerful. So why is Compass doing this? Financially, there's some benefits, if you couldn't guess that already. So if they're using it as an agent recruitment tool, for every 100 agents they recruit, that's worth $3.5 million to them. For every 100 website leads they close, so if somebody goes to compass.com and becomes a lead and gets monetized off that instead of the portal, that's worth $1 million. And if they're able to double-end deals, do both the buy and sell side, that's $500,000. But that's all chump change compared to what I think the real benefit is adjusting the commission splits with their agents. So in the US, right, the commission split with an agent could be 80-20, right? As the brokerage, I maintain 20, I give you 80 for selling a house. If I can adjust that as the brokerage by 1 percentage point to go from 80-20 to 79-21, thank you for bearing with me as I figured out math, that 1 percentage point is worth $52 million. Straight to the bottom line, pure profit. And why would they do that? Well, Compass as a brokerage could say, hey, if you want to work here, we've got all this exclusive inventory. You can't get that at any other brokerage. So we're just going to adjust your split a little bit. And before you go too crazy, well, look at this. Like if we adjust your split by 1 percentage point, that's going to cost you $1,900 a year, average number of transactions. But if because of that you can close 2 more deals a year, that's worth $52,000. Now, I know a lot of people have, differing opinions of agents, but that's pretty simple math. Maybe you just do 1 extra deal a year. It's still that's a 20x ROI, 10x ROI. So there's a win-win scenario here for folks. And then Compass wants to drive a lot of traffic. So this billboard mock-up is something that they put out, right? See, 25% of homes for sale 1 week before any other site. Go to compass.com. Who do you think had a problem with that? Any other site. So Zillow, the portal, came along and said, nope, we are not okay with you doing that. You've been messing around for too long. Stop. And what Zillow said was, if you, a brokerage or an agent, start a listing out in a private network, we're never going to post it on Zillow. It's going to be banned. I heard a pfft, and that's a good way to sum up what's happened. Because what Zillow doesn't want, they don't want this. I have this great screenshot from Sarah, or maybe someone like Sarah. Sorry, I don't know if you were supposed to give me that. But, of Domain in Australia, right? It's a bus ad. See properties for sale on Domain before anywhere else, right? Zillow doesn't want to get in this game where they have to pay for exclusive listings. So that's why they came up with this. They came up with this ban. What's interesting is tracking the number of exclusive listings over time, right? So it was going up, up, up. Zillow announced a new policy. It went down a little bit. And, full disclosure, I've adjusted the y-axis here. So it went down like 1,000. That may or may not be because of that. It might have been seasonal. But what's interesting is that it was still 8,000. It didn't get anywhere close to 0. And after Zillow started enforcing this new policy, the number of Compass exclusive listings actually went up. So if you're asking yourself the question, did it work? I will say, I have no evidence to suggest that it has worked. And Compass is still going out there and they're advertising. This is the CEO saying, by working with a Compass agent, you have access to homes not listed on any other site. And if you read the news a couple weeks ago, Compass just announced they will acquire Anywhere, the largest brokerage. So effectively, it's not just 25%, it could be 50% in some markets. So there's a huge power play going on. What does that all mean? What does it distill down to? Few key points I want to make on exclusive inventory. First off, this is an optional program. Nobody can force anybody to use this. Compass cannot force their agents to use it, and an agent cannot force a home seller to use it. And it typically lasts 2 to 3 weeks. This is not like you can only see the Marvel movies on Disney Plus forever. This is just a couple weeks, and then it goes out to the wider audience. Secondly, when I look about the moves and countermoves here, I think it's all about risk management. So Compass originally had this kind of risk-free proposition. Do you want to try a private exclusive? It's up to you. And if you get an offer, you can accept it. Like, there's no downside. And then we'll list it on the open market. It's like a pre-market, pre-launch, soft open for a restaurant. Try it out. And what Zillow had to do, they had to come in and introduce risk and said, that's all fine, but if you decide to do that, it's never going to be on Zillow. And to the point about brand, Zillow has an incredible brand, just like every other top portal in their markets. If you have to tell a consumer their home is never going to appear on that site, that's a tough sell, theoretically. And then lastly, this is clearly good for Compass. I'm not sure it's necessarily bad for Zillow. Watch this space. I'm still thinking about that and looking at the numbers. But it's definitely bad for other brokerages. Try to compete against that. Exclusive listings, very tough. So as I was chatting, as Simon mentioned, last time I was up here was in 2018. I was on the stage at Property Portal Watch. And aside from aging really well, I wanted to see how my predictions aged over time. Because I had some predictions from that. And I said, hey, 5 years from now, this, that, and the other thing. So I thought that'd be a fun way to kind of close this up. There's only 3. The first one I said was, 5 years from now, I bet we're going to see a more fragmented industry with a focus on consumer choice and increased value. And, in my estimation, we don't have that. A lot of these new players trying something new, companies like Redfin, Purplebricks, Opendoor, they've kind of, it's been a flash in the pan, and then they've contracted back down. You don't hear about them a whole lot. And some of the biggest players in the US brokerage space, Compass and eXp, they're exceedingly traditional in terms of their operations. So I was hopeful 8 years ago. I was hopeful that we would see more options to consumers. You want high price, low price, full service, this service, whatever, but you know what? Right now, it hasn't happened. Second thing I said was agents aren't going anywhere. I nailed that one. Agents are still undisputably the center of the transaction. They are the quarterback in the real estate process. If you look at the percentage of agent-assisted sales in the US, it's at an all-time high. It's gone up. And this is in a period of time where tens of billions of dollars have been invested to try to change this. Hasn't happened. There's a very important lesson to be learned there. Last thing I said. Property portals are secure in their position as the best place to advertise a home for sale. Was I right on that? I don't know. Remember the slides I showed you like 15 minutes ago? It was really clear, and I think now it's super clear that it is just as good as it's always been. It is an awesome time to be the #1 portal. All right, that's been Power Moves. I'm Mike DelPrete. You can use the QR code, go to my website if you want. Thank you.